All right, I should be live. And of course, that's always an existential question, but there's a good possibility I am actually live. And in that case, please let me know in the chat if you can hear me and see me so we can get things started tonight. Of course, I want to mention that Midway USA is the biggest supporter of the channel. And thanks to them, I can do live streams like this one, provide you with good information, and check out awesome gear and equipment related to preparedness and give you my honest feedback about it. So big thanks to Midway USA. And of course, we have a lot to talk about tonight. We're going to be discussing this entire drone scenario. Now, the thing I want to really bring to light here is the fact that this threat is becoming a dangerous feedback loop. And when I say that, what I mean is that there is more vulnerabilities being exposed right now because of the situation, and there is a higher propensity for malign actors to take advantage of the scenario that we're all watching unfold right now. And there's a lot we should consider regarding this particular fact. So, there are some interesting tidbits of information that I want to discuss. There's some things regarding new technology that's going to be implemented that I also want to talk about. And there's going to be a lot of evidence as to why this is the case. This is a self-fulfilling prophecy in many ways because it's an exponential issue that's going to keep growing the more energy and attention that's paid to it. And so that's kind of the conundrum we find ourselves in right now. So, I see great people in the chat. 5x5 in Canelo, Arizona says Mike H. Hello, David Baise. Good to see you. Stephen Petrikowski. Good to see you as well. 5x5 says Rocket. So does Christian Silva. So I think we are good to go. And then I also see that we have some people from New Jersey checking in here, letting us know that they are seeing drones all over the place. And of course, I think that's what a lot of us have heard as well. And because of that, I think we need to discuss what's going on. So, let's get started. Now, one thing I want to mention here is the fact that this issue is being exaggerated by the public's curiosity of the issue. And I'm not trying to downplay or demean the concept that this could be a dangerous scenario, which is why I titled tonight's discussion, A Dangerous Feedback Loop, not just a feedback loop, okay? There's a lot of exposure occurring here that can lead us down a very dangerous path. And so I want to make sure we pay attention to this. I want to make sure that we are aware of what's happening, but I want to bring a different perspective to the conversation because of course there's a lot of speculation happening right now, right? Everyone has heard or talked about the nuke sniffer capacity of these drones, right? We've talked about that possibility. We've talked about them trying to track down missing radioactive material or missing warheads or whatever it might be, right? So all of that speculation is out there. We also have the conversation surrounding the idea that these are hostile drones and they're spraying things into the sky, or they're setting up ISR checkpoints for being able to transmit data to their mothership, all this other stuff, right? So lots and lots of speculation and discussion has been going on around this. I want to bring a different perspective to the conversation for you so that first off you have a reason to listen to this information because it's not just regurgitated nonsense that everybody else has already discussed, right? And I'm not saying it's all nonsense. I'm just saying that I'm not just repeating other talking points in order to give you something to listen to, right? But at the same time, I also want you to take it seriously because I can't verify what threat level we're currently at based on these drones. Mike H says, I saw a drone the size of a small aircraft in Flagstaff, Arizona about 2 months ago, and a lot of people have been seeing similar things. However, 2 months ago, people weren't necessarily overly concerned with the idea of drones. And so I wonder, with your mindset at the time, how did you, I guess we'll just say, absorb that? Like, what was your thought process while you were looking at that drone? Probably that it was just something like commercial or something to do with an industry or whatever it may be. And just from a personal standpoint, I will let you know that here where I live is in the oil field of North Dakota, and every so often, very large drones come through the area, and they're used by the oil field companies as well as sometimes by the state government in order to go inspect oil field locations that aren't as easily accessible during certain weather conditions. So these things do happen, and these are reasonable things to see, but now we're starting to get into the territory that some have called, a level of hysteria. And I want to address that, and then I want to talk about some other things here. Now, one thing I want to start with here is, if you all remember, I want to use this as context and as a way to kind of springboard the conversation, okay? In 1938, we had the radio broadcast of the War of the Worlds by Orson Welles, right? And at the time, a lot of people weren't aware of the fact that this was a science fiction story being broadcast by the Mercury Theater of the Air. And so because of that, it caused a level of mass panic. Now, lots of people have just said over the years that that panic might have been exaggerated, right? As time goes on, it became bigger and bigger and bigger throughout everybody's telephone version of history, right? But regardless, there definitely were some people who panicked and even packed up their bags and left their homes or starting arming up because they were anticipating an alien invasion, right? And so this all occurred back in 1938. And now there's a lot of backlash and everything else and outrage because the way that the War of the Worlds was broadcast in that scenario was through the lens of being like a news broadcast, which is why it was so convincing for people who didn't start the story from the very beginning, where it was said, hey, this is a story and we're going to tell you a story and this is not real, right? People who came in after that didn't know what was happening and thought they were being invaded by aliens. So this happened. Now, one of the biggest issues was that there was a lot of backlash and outrage from the media at the time saying that, this was unacceptable because you framed it as if it was a media broadcast, and so people believed it, and now they're, being hysterical. But here's the thing. I want you to keep this in mind, okay? This was the point in time and the point in history where the media realized that you could have a lot of power in your hands with broadcasting a story or any other type of event and manipulating people's fears and their emotions. So that happened. Now, and this was a very good example of the media creating hysteria in the past, all right? Like I said, I'm not diminishing what is happening right now regarding these drones. I want to take this from a different perspective to give you an idea of how the threat level has changed because of what's happening right now. Take my monies. Also, SIG sucks. Says Tap Rack Stovepipe. Well, I appreciate that. I will take your monies. And I do like some SIG products quite a bit, but I can tell you there are some issues that they probably need to work on. All right? So we can all be reasonable here. Now, here's an interesting reason for why I started this conversation that way. This is a story from CNN today. Now, look, first off, I don't need to preface this every single time, but I do because there's always new viewers here on the channel. I don't think of CNN as some kind of bastion of truth, all right? But I like to go all over the place when it comes to news sources to kind of get an idea of how everybody is presenting the information, regardless of what bias they may have, okay? So this is what we know about mysterious drone sightings from today, okay? Check this out, all right? And the War of the Worlds thing was something I was already considering because of the level of hysteria and the panic and everything else that's related to these events and kind of how it's snowballing into this new creation that's occurring that we're witnessing right now, okay? Mysterious flying objects overhead, concern and confusion, and calls for military intervention. This isn't the plot of War of the Worlds, but rather the result of numerous possible drone sightings in recent weeks. The flying objects have been spotted over residential neighborhoods, restricted sites, and critical infrastructure. What an interesting way to start this conversation from the mainstream media that in the past learned what the War of the Worlds broadcast was capable of inducing. So I just want to keep that in mind when we go through the rest of this conversation, okay? I'm not saying that's what's happening. I'm just saying that this is an interesting reference they're using here, okay? The sightings have put intense pressure on federal agencies to provide more information about the aircraft, as officials have urged calm and emphasized there is no evidence suggesting the sightings pose a security threat. I want to assure the American public that we are on it, Department of Homeland Security Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas said Sunday on ABC's This Week. Now, of course, I don't trust that person at all because they had kind of like one job, and that job is not going very well. So, the U.S. is sending drone detection and tracking systems to 2 military facilities in New Jersey, according to 3 defense officials Monday. Now, this is where I want you to really absorb this information. And I'm going to say this sentence one more time because the next story is going to have some contradictory information in it. And that's where this whole thing is starting to get very confusing, okay? The U.S. is sending drone detection and tracking systems to 2 military facilities in New Jersey, according to 3 defense officials Monday. The systems are in process of moving to Picatinny Arsenal, a U.S. military research facility in northern New Jersey, and Naval Weapons Station Earl in central New Jersey, the officials said. Drones have been spotted near Picatinny Arsenal and over President-elect Donald Trump's golf course in Bedminster, according to military officials and state lawmakers. The sightings prompted the FAA to issue temporary flight restrictions over the properties, which is obviously a problem. If you're having to put in flight restrictions, especially around military facilities, that is an issue. Okay? Several instances of unidentified drones entering the airspace were also reported above Naval Weapons Station Earl, a U.S. Navy base south of Middleton, although no direct threats were identified. New Jersey Governor Phil Murphy received a briefing from the FBI on Sunday night regarding the drone sighting investigation around Naval Weapons Station Earl. He said in a post on X, "We are ready to assist the federal government in getting to the bottom of this," said Murphy. Reported drone activity prompted at least one airport, New York's Stewart International Airport, to temporarily close its runways for about an hour on Friday night. So this is already disrupting the economy, already disrupting travel, transit, and infrastructure, right? So this is disruptive in nature and already causing chaos, which in some of our foreign adversaries' minds is exactly the mission that they would like to accomplish, all right? At around the same time, airspace above Wright-Patterson Air Force Base in Ohio was restricted because of drone activity while authorities monitored the situation. Base spokesperson Bob Perdaman told CNN affiliate WHIO. The base closed its airspace for several hours over the weekend, but the Pentagon says it is not necessarily seeing any connection to the drone sightings in New Jersey and elsewhere. Now, here's where they try to kind of normalize the situation. There are thousands of drones flown around the U.S. on a daily basis, Pentagon spokesman Major General Pat Ryder said Monday. So as a result, it's not that unusual to see drones in the sky, nor is it an indication of malicious activity or any public safety threat. And so the same applies to drones flown near U.S. military installations. I guess so, but just to bring it back really quick here. The U.S. is sending drone detection and tracking systems to 2 military facilities in New Jersey, right? That is a sentence that I find to be kind of important as we move forward here. Now, moving on to the next section of information here, and I do want to go ahead and touch on this super chat that came in, 762, I like your style. How much of this is Joey getting kickbacks from drone manufacturers aside from just creating more chaos on his way out? You know what, I can't say whether or not that has any validity to it, but what I can say is that I don't think he's necessarily at the wheel regardless. So any involvement from that camp would be secondary, or at least through affiliate means, in my opinion. I don't think there's much strategy happening upstairs in that regard. Okay, Bees Nuts. Benny Johnson said that a shipment of radioactive material in a cargo container was lost. Okay, now Bees Nuts, I have heard that as well, but I've also heard that it was categorically medical radioactive material in the sense of not being very dangerous. So that's the other side of that I've also heard. So that's why I'm not jumping to conclusions regarding some of these situations quite yet. Although like I preface this entire conversation, you should be using caution and awareness, and you should be paying attention. I am just trying to bring another perspective to the conversation that I'm not seeing displayed as much right now, because obviously if I was to title this video tonight, nukes in the U.S. about to go off, right? Drones are looking for them. Everybody would click on this and be watching it right now to find out what's happening, because that's a much more, catabolic statement. And unfortunately, I don't have any evidence of that, so therefore I don't feel like I can say something like that, right? So I'm still waiting to get more data, but what I have right now is based on the logical conclusions I can make using the data I currently have access to, if that makes sense. So let's go ahead and move on to the next article I want to discuss, because this is actually from the DoD. And the other thing about it that I find interesting is that it contradicts what that CNN article was already stating. So a lot of contradictions, a lot of weird information. There's a lot of stuff I want to talk about regarding a lot of this technology and the information, but I also want to get to the part where this becomes a feedback loop. And that's the most dangerous part of this whole situation currently. Things can change quickly. Maybe an hour after this live stream, we'll find out that something crazy happens, and then all of a sudden the drones are our biggest threat, and they're coming right at us. That's one situation that could occur, sure. But right now, this is what I'm seeing and what I'm trying to give you, I guess, conceptually to consider. The Joint Staff addresses drones over New Jersey military installations. This is from December 14th, so from 2 days ago. In recent weeks, a number of drones have been sighted over New Jersey, prompting concern and thousands of telephone calls to report them. Some of those drones have even been sighted over Picatinny Arsenal and Naval Weapons Station Earl, both in New Jersey, which we have already discussed, okay? During an on-background telephone call today, officials from the Federal Bureau of Investigation, Department of Homeland Security, Federal Aviation Administration, and the Joint Staff provided comment and answered questions from reporters about the drone sightings. A spokesperson from the Joint Staff acknowledged that there had been sightings of drones over 2 military installations in New Jersey, but said such sightings are typical. We have had confirmed sightings at Picatinny Arsenal and Naval Weapons Station Earl, the spokesperson said. This is not a new issue for us. We've had to deal with drone incursions over our bases for quite some time now. It's something that we routinely respond to in each and every case when reporting is sighted. The spokesperson said military installations have means to detect and respond to such drones, and that security personnel are trained to identify, categorize, and employ those tools to keep drones from flying unauthorized over U.S. military bases. Now, this is confusing to me because according to the last article, the U.S. is sending drone detection technology to these two military installations. And yet the DoD, 2 days before that article was released, said they already have the means to detect and respond to such drones, and that they have security personnel that are trained to identify, categorize, and employ those tools to keep drones from flying unauthorized over U.S. military bases. However, drones certainly are flying unauthorized over these military bases and causing some of them to actually have to shut down or restrict their airspace. So which one is it? And why is it that we need the technology we're sending to these places if they already have the means to detect and respond to these drones? These are questions that I'm asking that I don't have the answer to, but the contradictions and the inconsistencies here make me more skeptical about what's actually happening, right? And I think that's a reasonable thing to assume. Right now, the FBI, DHS, FAA, and DoD have been unable to determine who is responsible for flying the drones, and there's no indication that there are adversary nations involved. Now, here's my understanding, okay? And you guys, you can tell me in the chat, if I'm correct here. If your drone is over 250 grams, aka it's like your almost most basic 4K capable DJI drone, right? Like, so we're talking, like I have a drone that's 249 grams specifically for the fact that you don't need certain licensing or certain registration related to it. These drones, a lot of them are being reported to be quite large. Some of them the size of SUVs is what we're being told. But of course, even the ones that aren't very large can have a very large footprint when it comes to being able to see them in a night sky. And from my understanding, these drones should be registered to a degree in order to at least be within regulation. So if they are not registered and are not capable of finding out who's operating them, then I would assume they would be immediately considered hostile or at least, at the very least, illegal, which in that sense you would assume they would either try to detain the drone itself or possibly remove it from the equation. So there's a lot of questions here that I have that don't necessarily seem to be adding up. To date, we have no intelligence or observations that indicate they were aligned with a foreign actor or that they had malicious intent, the spokesperson said. But we don't know. We have not been able to locate or identify the operators or the points of origin. And that also sounds very interesting coming from the military, or at least the Joint Staff, because let's just say if you were to use a drone in a militaristic scenario, right? You're using it for ISR, you're trying to find out, some intelligence about a possible target or whatever you want to call it, right? I'm not a military guy, so I'm not going to be able to use the correct terminology here by any means. However, I do at least have the basic understanding that if you were to launch a drone in a combative environment and you were going to use it in order to surveil or, do some sort of reconnaissance, and that drone was to be spotted, right? Or at least to be detected, the last thing you'd want to do is fly it back to your location, right? Because you would give away where you are. So I just don't necessarily understand how we're not able to track these things back to any particular area or track them back directly to the pilots or whatever it is. But regardless, I would think that they would just follow the drone until it landed somewhere, right? So whatever, I guess. I don't know how this all works. Now, here's something else to consider too. Now they're starting to say that they don't really have the ability to do these things. The spokesperson said the military has limited authorities when it comes to conducting investigations off of military installations in the United States. AKA, they can't follow the drones outside of the military base because now it's no longer on military property, and therefore they're limited in being able to conduct an investigation. And is also prohibited from conducting intelligence, surveillance, or reconnaissance operations in the United States, which might be used to determine the origins of who might be flying the drones. Okay, sure. But I'm pretty sure we have this thing called the Patriot Act, where any of our other law enforcement or any of our other, counterterrorism entities that are out there could easily just override any of that and make it happen. So regardless, there's a lot of contradictory and almost nonsensical information in this statement, right? Which is why everyone's so skeptical of the official story here, because they're clearly not telling us something, right? Which we know. Which is why a lot of people are considering the idea that they're looking for something dangerous and they're not willing to give up any of their secrecy or any, of their OPSEC while trying to accomplish their mission, which is where these theories are coming from because of the lack of transparency, which I can totally understand. Now, yeah, Trudolph Tampon says, sounds like they need more authority, right? Like, of course they don't need more authority, but they certainly would like it. And maybe this is a great segue for them to introduce that concept, right? So here we are, and that's definitely a problem as well. Let's see. New unexplored theory. Maybe multiple responsible parties with their own separate agendas, watching each other, watching us. Okay, and we're going to get into that, most likely Knight Who Says Me here very soon, because that's where this conversation is heading. I want to kind of preface it with some of the inconsistencies and just to give you an overview of what's happening right now and where some of this is occurring, especially involving, military assets. And then I want to go ahead and jump into how this is a dangerous feedback loop and how it is a self-fulfilling prophecy because of the level of hysteria is not a word I want to use for it per se, but interest, we'll just say, and attention that's being paid to the scenario is creating a kind of like a leviathan of just growth because it just keeps absorbing everything around it and getting larger and larger and larger, right? So what do I mean by that? We'll get there here in just a second. Now, remember, CNN says we're sending drone detection hardware to these bases. And the bases say they don't need it because they already have it. So I'm confused. But we do know that we have New Jersey and New York requesting special drone detection tech. What to know about the special drone detection tech requested for New Jersey and New York? Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer, Democrat in New York, asked for high-tech equipment from Robin Radar Systems, a Netherlands-based company. Now, there is some interesting stuff here that I think you should be aware of, and I do find it to have, let's just say, some level of validity applied to the reasoning for why some of these drones might not be able to be detected as easily as maybe we would assume, based on the fact that we have a very maybe inflated concept of what our military or what our government is capable of. So like these are just things I want you to consider and be aware of while you're trying to process everything that's happening. Because that's kind of what I'm doing here. And just so you all know, I appreciate you and I appreciate you, Replay crew, for checking in. Make sure you guys hit that like button and subscribe and everything else to, get back into the conversation and be here on time next time, right? But I still love you guys. But this helps me process my thoughts while having this conversation with you all. So I appreciate you all being here and being part of this conversation, but me putting it out there publicly and saying it out loud really helps me to develop my opinion about what's going on. So Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer said this weekend that the Department of Homeland Security should send special drone detection technology made by Robin Radar Systems to New York and New Jersey following a series of mysterious sightings. If the technology exists for a drone to make it up into the sky, there certainly is the technology that can track the craft with precision and determine what the heck is going on, Schumer told reporters. Schumer said he is requesting Robin's equipment in part because it uses a non-linear line of sight, but 360-degree technology that has a much better chance of detecting these drones. Now, first off, if he's hanging out with Nancy Pelosi and he's saying we need to get these radar systems and New York and New Jersey's taking the lead in this, you might want to find out where you can invest in this company, because I'm sure there's certain people in Congress right now that might be making investments and that this company might be, I don't know, worth more here in the near future. But that's not financial advice because I'm not a financial advisor. I just know people in Congress tend to make a lot of money off of this kind of stuff. So throw it out there, right? In recent years, the Netherlands-based Robin Radar Systems has risen in prominence through its hardware, though its hardware is not only used to track down drones. It basically uses all kinds of stuff, especially for the weather and things of that nature, and they've been deployed in Ukraine to be used in the conflict there and everything else. Now, there are some interesting things here, but I want to go ahead and let you guys know about the fact that they're saying that traditional radar systems are typically stationary, mounted on fixed platforms like buildings or tripods. But the Robin-produced radar systems have on-the-move functionality, allowing them to perform even when mounted on mobile objects like vehicles or ships. Okay, so now we have a mobile drone detection platform that can move around 3D detect drones in a 360-degree radius while also being able to be deployed to an area that needs it the most. So this makes sense. However, why don't we already have this technology, especially at these military installations, right? Because this is the future. We've all been seeing it unravel in Ukraine for years now. I'm a little confused, but here we are. Now, one thing I want to bring to your attention is the fact that these particular devices are actually relatively portable, okay? So these devices, they weigh like 60 pounds, and they can be mounted in the bed of a truck, which means I would just question what else could they be mounted on. And if we are going to be in a situation where we're trying to find these drones, or we're trying to track them down, or we're trying to have early detection or whatever else, is there a possibility that these are mounted on aircraft or other drones? And at that point, because 60 pounds, I guess, I don't know, I'm not a drone expert, but I assume there are drones out there that could hold up something that's only 60 pounds. And now are we just going to be adding to the mix additional things for people to freak out about that are in the sky? I'm not sure, but I am letting you know that they specifically advertise these radar systems as being mobile, being mountable, and they can move up to 60 miles per hour while still getting accurate data. So this is something that you should be aware of, and something that could just add more stuff, okay? Now, yeah, Yardbirds, exactly. I'm not accusing them of anything. Why would I do that? I don't know for a fact that they do those things. Gen X Gemini, you are always on time. I have to give you that. You're very much like Gandalf. Let's see. CNN also says they freed a man from solitary in perfect health with a manicure. Florida sheepdog. They certainly did that. They certainly did that. And I'm pretty sure it's being investigated now because it might have been a crime for what they did. Let's move on. Okay, so these things are capable of doing more than the radar systems our airports currently use. And this is something I wanted to find out about because I'm sitting here thinking, okay, we're shutting down airspace. We're shutting down restricted airspace for these drone incursions. Can't these radar systems detect these drones, and why can't they tell us what's going on? And there might be some truth to what's going on here, which is why I wanted to bring it to your attention. Because, look, I'm very open-minded, and I'm willing to entertain the idea that maybe we just aren't as capable as we like to assume here in this country, okay? All right, they're talking about the drone threat here for airports, talking about how it delays flights, it can cause serious risk of accidents, it has surveillance of secure and sensitive areas of airports, it can impact public trust of airport safety, a big one, and it can create reputational loss and potential liability claims from airlines. So understand, by just having drones in the area now, at this point in time, while everyone's suddenly aware of the fact that drones exist, suddenly aware of the fact that the sky is busy with traffic, and suddenly aware of the fact that anyone could be flying these drones, now air travel is going to start taking a hit because people are going to be concerned. Like, if I go to an airport to fly and suddenly I decide I can't because my flight was delayed and no one's being able to get board their plane because there's drones in the area shutting down the airspace, do I feel very confident now about getting on an airplane? Probably not. I'm a little concerned. Trump just canceled his trip to Bedminster, New Jersey because he didn't want to get on a plane in that area while his drone activity is occurring. So he's already saying, I'm not getting on a plane in that area right now. So how many other people are going to start taking that lead? And how will this affect the economy, the infrastructure, trust in these systems, or anything along those lines? And then you have to start questioning, who benefits the most from this in the sense of creating chaos and turmoil here in the country and affecting us financially as well as just psychologically, right? So these are the threats that drones pose in an airport environment. And no, this is not an article because of what's happening right now. This is from the 20th of July, 2023. This is just about these radar detection systems. This is why I wanted to share this with you, okay? Can airport radar see drones? Right? Because that was my question. Don't airports have radar? Like, why are we even worried? Like, what are we talking about having to deploy new systems? Here's why most traditional radar can't detect drones. The drone is too small to detect. It's indistinguishable from other objects, like birds. It can't track multiple objects, or the radar doesn't have the range. So that all makes sense, and maybe that's possibly like why this is such an issue. But understand that what I'm hearing there is that our current radar systems, especially at airports, maybe not militarily, but at least commercially, are incapable of telling whether or not something's a seagull or a drone, right? And that's kind of problematic based on the fact that we're in a fifth generation warfare environment where drones are being used heavily in conventional and kinetic warfare, right? So this is something that, are we just completely behind the curve on? Now, why am I bringing this all up to your attention? Because I want to give you all this context, and I wanted to give you some good information and some updates about what has happened so far and why people are so concerned about the drones. This next part of the conversation is completely and utterly about the feedback loop scenario that's occurring because of this infatuation. And because of that, we are opening doors to our foreign adversaries or domestic adversaries, which there are many of here in the country, to do more damage. And the more damage that's done, the more others might take this opportunity. So this is something I want you to really consider. And I also want you to consider this. This has nothing to do with the drone thing. But we recently just saw an assassination on CCTV, right, of a healthcare provider CEO. And a large portion of this country, as of right now, is cheering the person who committed that crime on. And regardless of how you feel about everything that's happened around that scenario, generally, I don't try to condone murder. It's just something I don't necessarily think is a good idea. And yet a huge amount of our population in this country right now seem to think that it's reasonable based on certain circumstances, right? So do not for a second think that there aren't just straight up Americans in this country right now who would be willing to participate in this chaos campaign using these drones to their advantage in order to hurt the system even further, right? Because that's a lot of what is being revealed through that scenario. That there are people here in our country that are just Americans. No, they didn't come across the southern border. No, they're not affiliated with ISIS or Al-Qaeda or the Taliban or anybody else. No, they're not Russian, and no, they're not Chinese. They are literally just Americans who were born here, raised here, and are mad about things and don't have any other thought processes that they can rely on besides possible disruption, chaos, or violence. So that is 100% still a possibility. And this feedback loop is going to open more doors of opportunity for those people, for the KSTs who are in the country right now, known or suspected terrorists. Minimum of 4,000 have been apprehended in this country, crossing into the country illegally, mostly from the northern border, which border is closer to, I don't know, New Jersey? The northern border or the southern border, right? And at the same time, we also have, Chinese nationals in the country that are acting as espionage devices. And we're going to talk about that here in just a minute as well. But regardless, I'm just reminding you that there is the possibility that people could just be doing this even at this point to be part of the problem. So one thing I do want to ask, just to throw this out there in case you're interested at all, and just because I do try to represent the weird prepper people here, okay? What is going on here? Jeez Louise. I don't know how to use the internet. That's what's going on. If you guys want to support me in the Gundies, I think the last day for voting is tomorrow. I'll put the link in the chat right now. And you can vote for me to be the most likely to survive the apocalypse, all right? And honestly, the people who organize the Gundies have definitely helped the channel in the past, and they're a good group of people. So if you want to support that, please feel free to do so. You can vote for me, and maybe it helps put this channel on the map as being not only the one that'll survive the apocalypse, but also still more in the 2A firearms space than maybe some other preparedness channels. And I'm going up against some heavy hitters here. So we're talking, we've got Such, we've got Canadian Prepper, we've got, the Tactical Rifleman. We got some really heavy hitters here, even Mike Glover. So hey, Alaska Ballistics is here. Chuck's an awesome guy. Even Rogue Preparedness. There's some actually other good options here. So you don't have to vote for me. Just vote for somebody good. Because Morgan from Rogue Preparedness is really cool, and she has some good content. So there you go. Just wanted to share that and give you guys something else to consider, just because I would appreciate your support, okay? Now, I'll go ahead and put that out there one more time. Okay. Now, Vagrant Loafer, I will definitely give you magic tricks during the apocalypse. The problem is that most of them are not family friendly. So, hopefully you have a good sense of humor. Let's talk about the feedback loop, okay? This is going to get weird. Now, what do I mean by feedback loop, okay? You know what? I'm going to go ahead. Let me grab a quick just definition of feedback loop. Let's see here. This is all giving me the bad definitions of feedback loop. Well, so basically, the way it's being used in this conversation, because all those definitions were related to power and electricity and stuff. A feedback loop regarding what's happening with the drones right now is where energy is put back into the loop and grows the entirety of the system and feeds off itself, right? But as it feeds off itself, it continually grows. And that's what we're seeing right now in many ways. And I'm going to demonstrate that here for you with some news stories that just came out within the last couple of days. And then I'm going to also talk about some of our foreign adversarial threats, as well as some of our criminal threats that are also involved in some of this drone activity. And then we're going to talk about some of the differences there and let you know that there will be opportunists here doing some bad things regarding drones here in the near future, 100%, if not already occurring. So let's get going, all right? Okay. New Jersey sheriff sends own drone to follow mystery flying objects. What happened left some stunned. Okay. A fed-up New Jersey sheriff said he tried to track the mystery drones swarming the skies above his county, but they easily evaded his effort. That's kind of weird, right? The Ocean County Sheriff's Office sent its own industrial-grade drone into the air Thursday in a bid to follow one of 50 unmanned aerial vehicles a local cop saw coming off the ocean, Sheriff Michael Mastronardi said. The officer alerted the state police, the FBI, and this ad is just messing with me bad right now, and the U.S. Coast Guard. The Coast Guard officials then reported 13 drones with wingspans of 8 feet following one of their vessels. The mysterious drones, which don't give off heat like more typical versions, swiftly maneuvered out of their clutches, Mastronardi told News Nation reporter Rich McHugh. Okay. McHugh told the story Friday night to anchor Elizabeth Vargas, explaining he originally thought the drone hysteria might be a result of pranksters until he saw them himself. If this is not our military, then it is even more scary, McHugh said. These things look like they are fixed wing and they have multiple lights. I'm not really sure how to process what I saw last night. Both the photographer and I were kind of stunned. The SUV-sized unidentified aircraft have been buzzing New Jersey and panicking residents since November 18th. Theories about where the drones come from vary, with some believing they may have been sent by foreign adversaries, which people are saying is not the case now, but we do remember that we had that congressman come out and say, well, it's from a mothership that was put there by Iran. Now, here's the thing. This sheriff said, we got to see what's happening. No one's giving us any answers. They send an industrial-grade drone up in the air. The drones that are already there easily evade it. So that might tell you a couple things. One, they're high-tech. Because the police, especially sheriff's departments, they have really good high-tech drones. They use them for search and rescue. These are not the kind of drones that most average civilians own on their own that they ordered off Amazon, right? Like these are industrial-grade drones. They're meant for search and rescue and other ISR capabilities. However, this sheriff put a big-ass drone up in the sky to find out where all these other drones are coming from. Now, I want you to tell me in the chat, and you know what? We can even do a little poll here, okay? Here's a poll, and I want your answer here. Do you think that drone was seen by anyone else? Okay? Why am I asking that question? Because this drone was sent up in the sky to investigate the other drones. Now we have another industrial-sized drone up in the sky. Now people in New Jersey have one more drone they're seeing up in the sky that is large and has lights on, because I guarantee the sheriff's department is following protocols. And so suddenly there's one more drone for people to be reporting. Okay? Now, I'm not trying to diminish the threat level of this drone activity. I'm trying to show you that this can be that self-fulfilling prophecy of more drones going up. Okay? Now, let's talk about another exact scenario that occurred. New Jersey pilot lost control after encounter with unidentified drone. Report. Paranormal investigator Michael B. says his drone fell from the sky. A New Jersey drone pilot says his device lost power and was forced to descend from a restricted chunk of airspace while the mystery flyer he was trying to investigate managed to stay airborne despite a signal designed to shut down legal drones. So, what would that tell you? Well, if you're in restricted airspace trying to chase somebody else, okay, and that drone stays in the sky and yours doesn't, who restricts the airspace, and who would be allowed to still be operating within that restricted airspace? Not you, but probably somebody else with better connections. Your drone went down, theirs didn't. That might be some evidence as to whose drones these are, because let's be honest, I would expect our military to be able to keep their drones up in the sky if required, but if some civilian drone came up to interfere with whatever it was they were trying to accomplish, of course they would get it out of the way, especially if it was in what was already considered to be restricted airspace. okay? So I think this is pretty telling. Michael B., a podcaster and paranormal investigator behind the Terror Talk Productions YouTube channel, lives near the Picatinny Arsenal, an Army facility near where dozens of sightings of drones have been reported in recent weeks. He was flying in the area attempting to get a closer look at a larger unidentified object he believes is a drone. There was a drone just hanging out. I had full battery life. Not 3 minutes into flight, I lost control of the drone. Okay? Sounds like jamming to me. He said he saw a warning flash across the screen of his controller and the battery died. Drone started going down, dead battery. But while the restricted flight area shut down his drone, the mystery one he was trying to approach continued to fly. So, I think we can come to the conclusion here, there's a good chance the drone he was looking at was allowed to be in said restricted airspace. His was not. The other thing to consider here is that he saw drones in the sky. He owns a drone. He sent drone up in the sky to find other drone. Now how many drones are in the sky? This is why this continues to get bigger and bigger, because everybody with a drone is putting their drone up in the sky to look at the other drones now. But this can also be dangerous, extremely dangerous, but not because it could, crash into other drones or cause some sort of an accident. Like I said before, because it opens the opportunity for malicious actors to do much worse things in the chaos of all of these other drones being airborne, okay? Now, we did have another situation occur where we had a similar scenario. So, let's talk about it. In Boston, okay, 2 were arrested as investigations continue into drone sightings in the Northeast. So people are doing this. This is your proof of this. Okay? Officials have said there's no evidence that sightings pose a national security or public safety threat. I don't believe that, and I'm sure you don't either. However, we're definitely not getting the full story. And we also need to understand that not every single drone in the sky is likely a security threat. However, the one that is, we won't know because there's so many other drones in the sky. 2 men were arrested in Boston over the weekend for flying a drone dangerously close to Logan International Airport as investigations into objects in the sky continue across the East Coast. Robert Duffy, 42, of Charleston, and Jeremy Falkick, 32, of Bridgewater, were arrested Saturday evening, taken into custody on Long Island, part of the Boston Harbor Islands. Following a hazardous drone operation near Logan Airport's airspace, Boston police said. Both were charged with trespassing. Authorities said that a Boston police officer specializing in crime surveillance detected an unmanned aircraft system operating near the airport and identified the drone's location. When police responded, 3 suspects fled on foot, and Duffy and Fulchik were apprehended with a drone found in Duffy's backpack, police said. A search was ongoing for the 3rd suspect. It's unclear if the suspects have retained attorneys. Boston police warned that even small drones pose significant risks, including the potential for catastrophic damage to airplanes and helicopters. Near collisions can cause pilots to veer off course, putting lives and property at risks. So, now it starts talking about all the other drone stuff and everything else. But this is another example. These guys went to the airport and started flying a drone around, most likely because of all the activity that's going on right now. So, Biden sends up sniffer drones. Shocker. I agree. If you see a drone hovering around, I don't know, an elementary school, that might be a Biden drone. So be aware of that. But just I'm throwing that out there as something everybody needs to watch out for, okay? Let's see. Vagrant loafer, not safe. These mysterious drones are FAA compliant. I mean, sure. So what? That doesn't mean anything. Okay, so think of it this way, and I'm going to preface this as this is just speculation. I'm not trying to scare anybody, and I'm not personally super concerned about this because I honestly believe most of what we're seeing is some level of military activity that then is being copycatted by a lot of civilians on the ground, but also could be used as cover for nefarious activity, which is where the concern comes in from. But at the same time, here's something I want to do, okay? I am aware of the last Sean Ryan episode. Trust me about that. I am very aware of it. I understand the likelihood of an October 7th style attack occurring here in the United States within the first quarter of 2025. I get it. But I also need you to look at this from this perspective first, so that way you can develop a full-blown opinion of what's going on right now and understand that a big part of the problem is going to be the amount of people who are jumping on this opportunity. I need you guys to keep in mind, right now, if I flew my drone up in the sky and then filmed it on my phone, I fly it up high enough to where you can barely see it, but it's got the lights on. And I film it on my phone. And then I just post it right now on YouTube. I say, mysterious drone right above my house, right? It will get views no matter what. People will watch it and wonder what it is, right? That's it. And so right now you're getting that all over social media, and everybody who wants to get easy views or clicks or whatever you want to call it is doing that because they know it will work right now. So please keep that in mind. But the other thing is, and H, I agree, it could be related. I'm not saying it's not. I'm literally going to talk about that here, I promise you. But the other thing I want to bring up is that the idea that because these drones are FAA compliant means that they're not dangerous or not nefarious doesn't necessarily add up. Keep this in mind. If I was a terror cell and I wanted to, I don't know, drive a truck, full of explosives and park it at a target, for detonation at a later point in time, would I turn my headlights on at night while driving that truck? Would I make sure I had tags and registration up to date? Would I make sure that everything looked proper so that way there wasn't any reason for someone to inspect my vehicle or suspect I was up to something criminal in the process, right? That is why I don't think that necessarily checks out as being a end-all be-all for these drones not necessarily being nefarious. Because if I was doing something nefarious, I would make sure my drone had its proper lights on and had all the stuff that it was supposed to have going on in order to avoid any unnecessary confrontations with authorities, right? That's what people do when they commit crimes. People don't drive to a bank robbery in a vehicle that gets them pulled over before they ever get there, right? Like, that's just something to consider, okay? So, I just want to mention that, okay? And I do want to tell you that, yes, I'm not kidding. If I throw my drone in the sky right now, film it in a blurry way because it's too high for the phone to actually see, because guess what? It's nighttime, right? And then post it and just say, weird drone above my house, what's happening right now? 10,000 views minimum, right? And for people who like are just trying to get attention on social media, maybe they don't have like a channel or a presence or anything like that, and they just want that attention. That's a lot of easy attention now, isn't it? So I'm not saying that's what's happening always. I'm just saying all of these things are happening simultaneously. It's exponential. This issue is exponential because it's a feedback loop, because it's going to grow itself because of what all this attention is creating. Now, let's talk about actual nefarious actors and drone activity occurring here very recently. U.S. investigating whether Chinese citizen charged with flying drone over base committed more serious offenses. Okay, this is from today. The U.S. government is investigating whether the Chinese citizen arrested after allegedly flying a drone over Vandenberg Space Force Base in California perpetrated other offenses. Last week, the U.S. Attorney's Office for the Central District of California announced that 39-year-old Yinpao Zhao, a lawful permanent resident of the U.S., was charged with failure to register an aircraft, not providing transportation, and violation of national defense airspace. But court filings indicate that the government is continuing to investigate whether Zhao engaged in additional, more serious offenses, like espionage. While Zhao has not been slapped with charges of spying on behalf of China, in a sworn affidavit justifying the arrest warrant, the FBI agent heading the probe into Zhao described their own experience, noting, "I am familiar with tradecraft and techniques utilized by foreign adversarial nations and the efforts those nations undertake to collect intelligence on elements of military infrastructure of their interest." So, we have evidence that this is something our adversaries are currently engaging in. Now, we don't know for a fact that this gentleman, this Zhao person, was actually a spy. Until we know that for a fact, we can't necessarily say that it's exactly what was occurring. However, to be a Chinese national who's a permanent resident here, flying a drone near a Space Force base and getting arrested for it because of, being too close and doing something they weren't supposed to do and not being registered properly and all those things, will tell you that there's a good chance that there is some level of espionage occurring, okay? So we know that these things can be related to this type of activity. So here's where the feedback loop scenario becomes a little bit more problematic, okay? Military's testing drones or military's using drones to detect things that we don't necessarily know about or get told about, okay? Other people send their drones up because they're wondering what these drones are doing. The drones are going up there. We have sheriffs sending drones up there. We have podcasters sending drones up there. We have random civilians sending their drones up there and running away when the police show up. So they're setting up their drones to see what the other drones are doing. Every time this happens, there's more and more drones in the sky. Then we have Zhao saying, well, might as well just send my drone up too. But by the way, mine's the one that's going to start taking surveillance photos of this Air Force base or of this military installation. And while everyone else's drones are up there at the same time, good luck figuring out which one's doing something bad and which one's not doing anything wrong at all. And then, of course, maybe they chase those guys down in Boston and catch a couple of them and say, okay, we got to put them away. Maybe Zhao gets caught because he didn't register his drone and created a paper trail that made it so it was easier to find him. I don't know. But at the same time, maybe Mr. Podcaster guy lost his drone in the sense of it failing mid-flight, but did he get investigated? Did they see if he had any random photos on his drone or anything else that he learned during that flight? I don't know. But all I'm saying is that this allows for more of this activity to occur during these situations because you now have cover of overpopulation. You have cover of numbers, right? And it is creating an environment where more and more nefarious things are being missed, where more nefarious activity could be, well, under the radar, which is part of the problem. Because according to the Department of Defense, these military installations can detect drones already. But according to CNN, we need to send radar detection systems to these military installations so they can still start detecting drones. So there's a lot of contradictions. There's a lot of possibilities. There's a lot of opportunity for someone to do something bad right this second or for somebody to get in under our noses while everything else is occurring. Now, let's jump in to another part of this conversation. You guys just heard me talk about how if I was to do, something illegal, right, in order to not be seen by authorities, right, or in order to not be immediately investigated or not create suspicion, that I would be following the rules, right? I'm gonna have my lights on. I'm gonna have my registration. I'm gonna have all that stuff going. Try to give myself the best chance possible of getting from point A to point B in order to accomplish whatever mission it is that I have set in front of me. Well, how about we talk about that little threat that I like to bring up every so often here on this channel, and the way that they've been using drones to kind of show you as well that their strategy is the opposite. Which means I'm not sure if there's a link here between what we're seeing and what's happening and one of our biggest adversaries, the drug cartels. Border Patrol reports that cartels are using drones to guide migrants into the U.S. Now, I'm not saying that we're guiding migrants into New Jersey from the ocean. However, this is just to give you something else to consider regarding these criminal organizations and their use of drones and why it differs from what we're seeing right now. And maybe this helps you write off this possibility as not necessarily being one of the more likely. We can't write it off in total. We don't know. And I wouldn't put it past the cartels to use this opportunity to run their drones around with impunity, understanding that there is so much activity and so much attention being paid to this right now that they can pretty much get away with anything, right? Right now is the time for them to just be sending drones carrying kilos of cocaine or fentanyl or whatever else it is they want to send across the border and just get it done while all this hysteria is occurring. But here's the thing that you have to be aware of. In 2019, Border Patrol agents in the Rio Grande Valley sector recovered a drone used by the cartel. Agents found the crashed drone in La Grulla, Texas, near the river. A Texas agent anonymously reported that the lights on the drone were covered with electrical tape, which would make it difficult to see at night. The agent also revealed the area where agents found the drone has seen an influx of illicit trafficking. So, at least from that piece of evidence, it would seem like the criminal organizations do try to cover their tracks and hide their activity in regards to the use of drones for these purposes. But the drones we're all concerned with right now in New Jersey and in other areas in the Northeast, as well as we're seeing them now in Arizona, California, and other places, those drones are running with their lights on and very visible in the night sky. So most of them seem to be, like that person was mentioning in the chat earlier, FAA compliant, right? So there at least gives us something to consider regarding the likelihood of this being criminal organizations or anything like that. So what does this mean? How do we get better prepared? Call Team America, right? How do we get better prepared based off this information? And how do we use this information to apply it to our mindset moving forward, okay? Our enemies are watching what's happening right now. They're either involved in it or at the bare minimum, they're observing it. And they're learning a lot right now based on this particular scenario. And what they can learn from this, in my opinion, is that if they overload the system with these devices, there's just nothing anyone can really do about it. And if civilians are getting involved, which they are, right? And then we have law enforcement getting involved, and then the drones that are already causing this to even occur in the first place are likely military in nature. Well, we have all of the U.S. civilians, law enforcement, and military launching drones into the sky. And what better time or opportunity for a foreign adversary to go ahead and throw some up there as well, right? And then how do you track down any of what's going on? It would be a monumental task. Because the truth of the matter is, and this is something, it's just the truth. It's not necessarily unfortunate, but it's just reality. Our law enforcement and military assets don't have the resources to be everywhere at every time. And there is just not enough people and not enough equipment to literally stop this from happening all at once without leveling the playing field, aka destroying all air traffic in the meantime, right? In the sense of some sort of electromagnetic pulse or some sort of jamming technology that just drops all electronics from the sky in a certain area, like a restricted airspace. Other than that, how do you actually get a handle on this situation? I honestly don't know. So our foreign adversaries and our domestic adversaries are at the minimum observing, possibly participating, and learning a lot about what they can get away with and what they could be capable of doing here in the U.S. at this point in time. I have the same 249-gram drone as you, and me and my son hooked it up to some neon lights and sent it up last night, got trying to have fun, but wasn't visible. Yes, well, where there's a will, there's a way. And it just depends. How far up can you go or how far? And my drone has lights on it already. So I'm not sure if that's the difference maybe because mine already has lights that look like the ones we're seeing in the news articles and everything else, right? They're red and green and all the stuff that you're supposed to have for FAA compliance. But regardless, you could hook up a light to that you would be able to see. Think about the level of power and output that some of these little AAA-sized handheld lights have at this point in time. All you'd have to do is tape one on there and send it up, and I'm sure you'd be able to see that from much further away, right? So, there are ways, I'm sure, but regardless, our country is at high risk right now. We have a very serious national security issue occurring, and it might have nothing to do with why those drones were there in the first place. I said in the last live stream, there has been contract offer after contract offer for drone companies to create ISR drones for the military that, in general, fit a lot of the parameters as to what we're seeing right now, which means there may just be testing occurring. These could be AI-driven drones where testing the AI systems is also occurring. There's a lot of reasons to believe that this could just be completely just normal behavior that we're just not privy to because it's, top secret or we just don't have the clearance for it, right? But regardless, it has caused a self-fulfilling prophecy of drones being unleashed on the country all over the place. And it takes one person with bad intentions to use this opportunity to do something really bad with their drone. And that's it. And right now would be the time. So be very vigilant right now. Be very aware and be careful. Don't go out there and start flying your drone around and be part of the problem if that's not a necessity for you right now, right? Look, people fly drones for their job. People fly drones for a hobby. I'm not saying you shouldn't do that. I'm just saying maybe don't fly your drone near a military base right now. Maybe don't fly your drone just to get more likes on a video because you have a drone video now, right? Right now is when something bad could happen the easiest regarding drone warfare being used in the United States. So this is why you should be concerned. This is why I'm concerned, not because of the original origin of the drones that started this hysteria, which is, like I said, not a word I like to necessarily use for this, but it does emulate some of that energy and that attention that's being paid to the situation. But now that that exists, and now that so much energy and attention is being paid to it, it's just going to keep growing bigger and keep growing larger, and more people are going to get involved, and more people are going to be paying attention. And that's why we have people who are literally looking up at the sky and going, oh my gosh, what's that? And it's a freaking airplane, right? So this is the time for something bad to happen. If you don't own night vision, which a lot of people don't because it's way too expensive, but if you don't own it, one of the things night vision teaches you very fast is that if you look up at the sky at night with night vision, there's actually a ton of stuff up there. A ton of moving things all over the sky. And so maybe like that's something that people don't realize, because unless you see it, it's like you don't really think it, right? But like that revealed to me very quickly, there's way more stuff up there moving around doing this or that than I would have ever anticipated. So just keep that in mind. So I did actually miss a couple of chats, maybe. I don't know. Mike H., illegal aliens who crossed through the Huachuca Mountains stole my Hoka sandals last Monday night. Seriously, don't leave your sandals outside. That is weird. But also, I'm sorry to hear that. And it is unfortunate and scary that this is happening. Our borders are completely unsecure. Our current administration, as well as previous administrations in the past, have done this purposely to hurt us as a country. And I am not kidding you when I say there are people who are natural-born American citizens who were raised here, went to school here, did all the stuff, had an American childhood, basically, who want to take down the system right now. And this is a really low investment, low energy way to get involved with that. And that is a huge concern I have based on a lot of these people's mindset lately about the rationalization of murder, right? So please be aware of that. Please, okay? So, all of you are amazing. I appreciate you all. Can we all stop being so stupid? It's Terradynamics XP4 drones, literally made in New Jersey, and the rest are copycats and morons. Hey, that might be true, Desolator, and I can't verify that completely because, you know what? I'm not boots on the ground there. But regardless, it's creating, if that's the truth, let's just say, right? That is what catalyzed the scenario to grow out of control and create this monster that just keeps eating itself and growing larger in the process. And that's the real issue now, is that even if nothing bad was happening to begin with, now is the right time for it to be bad. Because these malicious actors have realized, well, I guess you can just do that, right? And that's where my concern is really starting to head towards. Rather than like the original appearance of these drones creating a level of danger in my mind, now the danger has risen and the risk level has risen because of what it has started. So, I appreciate you all. I think you're amazing. I would advise, if you'd be interested in supporting the channel directly, to be in the private live chat tonight, where I just hang out and talk, and usually it devolves into gun talk because, well, most of the people who are in the private live chat like to talk about that. So if you want to be part of that, you can either join the YouTube channel membership by hitting the join button down below. And that is right below me on your screen right now. So check that out. Or you can join the Subscribe Star. There are a couple additional perks on Subscribe Star. I'd say the best perk there is that you can direct message me and we can have a chat if need be, which I try my best to stay on top of. I do post exclusive content on there every so often, but it has been hard to stay on top of that schedule as I am extremely busy right now trying to get all of my end of year obligations taken care of. And there are a lot of them that are still not taken care of. So I'm doing the best I can, and I appreciate everybody's patience. But I just put that link in the live chat. If you're interested, it's also in the description. But that starts at 9:15, so we have a little bit of time before then. Let's see here. Trump implying not going there because a nuke could go off. And I didn't hear that, Watchman. I just heard that, he was not going there because of the drone issue, and it didn't seem like a good idea to risk it. But if that's the case, well, I think that's problematic. And I can't just go directly to the worst case scenario in anything, because that's a good way to convince yourself that you're currently in the worst case scenario. And I think that having some skepticism and having an open mind to being able to change your thought process about what's occurring is the right way to do things as someone who wants to be practical about preparedness, because, well, you need to be able to adapt and overcome. And if you're not willing to adapt because you're too stubborn or rigid in what you already believe, then it will be hard to overcome, right? So I do the best I can with that, and I try my best not to put information out there that I can't personally validate. But hopefully this conversation was very beneficial. Hopefully it gave you some concepts to consider, and hopefully it was something different than what everybody else has already explained to you, because I've already watched all those videos myself. So why have a repeat of the exact same information? So I wanted to kind of put this out there as being an actual threat now. If it wasn't a threat to begin with, it has now evolved into a threat. Thanks mainstream media, thanks social media, right? Everybody who has a drone is now flying their drone. What does that lead to? You guys are amazing. Anything else you need from me at all, go to magicprepper.com. And besides that, that's going to be it for Magic Prepper.